So I'll take a quick look at the animatic and look at frame or shot 14, which is Ronnie on the hovercraft, and the pilot is putting on the brakes. So Ronnie's kind of like lunging back a little bit or recoiling from the brake. So when approaching that pose, I always start with the hips. Once again, make sure that your auto keyframe is on and that you're in body parts mode here in the Human IK control panel. So the way the body moves is all from the hip, okay? So I always move the hip first, and then I usually position the feet right after the hip. This kind of locks him into place for where he needs to be from the center of gravity, which is the hip. Just with a little bit of rotation and placement of the hip, you're already defining his balance and his attitude. It's amazing to me how much you get right out of the hip. I keep bouncing over to the storyboard to kind of get an idea of what he's supposed to do. And of course, his hands are kind of up and flailing. So let's move those hands into place. I'm going to translate and rotate the hand into the general position I want. And then I'm going to go and mess with the elbow a little bit to get that kind of off-kilter angle. Let's give the chest a little bit of rotation too. After we position the other hand, let's go ahead and rotate the head a little bit. So as you can see, I just keep going over and over and over, jumping back between my storyboard and my pose controls to get him into that off-kilter, off-balance position that I think he should be in for this particular shot. Often I'll go into models only mode so I can really see the silhouette of the character, especially when I go in and start modifying things like the shoulders. So next I'm going to do a couple more tweaks and then push his hip back, and there it is. He looks like he's really off balance. So next I'm going to grab all his body parts and we're going to add a pose. So here in the pose control window, I'm going to go ahead and click the plus sign, and that adds the pose and gives it a thumbnail. And then I'm going to rename the pose 014 Ronnie. There are many reasons to add a pose to your pose controls. You're basically building up a library of poses as you go along, which you'll find is very useful later, especially when it comes to like mirroring or reusing poses. In addition to adding a pose, I'm also going to go ahead and set a key on frame 1. And then let's take a look at the storyboard again. And you can see in this one, he's holding onto the rail and kind of leaning forward. So the principles are the same. We're going to start with the hip, move that forward a little bit, bend him over. Then grab the chest and bend him over a little bit there. Maybe move his foot forward like he's trying to catch his balance. And then move his head up so he's looking at the kid. And then we'll pull his other arm back down a little bit and like he's counterbalancing, leaning on the rail. I pop back and forth between the storyboard and the action a lot. As you can see here in the storyboard, he's leaning over a little bit more than I have him in the scene. In this case, I think the hip looks good, so I'm going to edit the spine. And we'll edit the chest a little bit, and then we'll have to move the hand back up into position. I'll mess around with the elbow a little bit, and then reposition his hand a little bit better. Once again, you can see we're using both inverse kinematics and forward kinematics to get the position exactly the way we want. Now, let's go and edit the hands. We'll grab all the fingertips and then just rotate them around as though the hand was curling around the rail. It's that easy. And then we'll rotate his head back up a little bit. And then from this angle, I'm really not liking the hips, but I do like the hand position. So what we're going to use is a tool called pinning. So we're going to pin the translation and the rotation on the hand so it doesn't move when I move the hips. Pinning is very powerful, and you can key it on and off. So you can pin it to a desk maybe for a minute and then release the desk. And I typically leave the feet pinned all the time. You see, as I observe the character from many different angles, I continue to tweak and I continue to change. All right, so let's move on. As you can see, this is pretty straightforward and very rapid once you're experienced doing it. So let's jump over to our storyboards again. And as you can see here, he's turning around to watch the kid run to jump off the hovercraft. So to match, we've got to kind of swing the camera back around here, and then let's straighten him out. And turn his head around like he's looking back at the kid. Another quick glance at the storyboard, and we'll see that his right hand is kind of in position, but his left hand needs to come off the railing. Actually, I think it needs to be out a little bit further, and I'm going to rotate it so it's a little more natural. All right, so at this point, the vehicle is fully stopped, so he doesn't need to be leaning on the railing anymore. So I'm going to take off the pinning. So I'll spin his chest around a little bit, make sure to turn off the pinning on both hands, and then I'm going to go ahead and drop that arm. I'll take a quick glance at my storyboard again, and then back over. I think I want to tweak the head just a little bit. Once again, as you can see, I'm really blasting through these poses very quickly. I'm going to rotate his feet a little bit, but that's the important part, is we're just trying to rough it in. We're not really doing animation yet. We're just kind of getting that starter pose for that particular shot. Let's raise him up in his hips a little bit here because he's pretty much regained his balance. Once again, touch the head just a little bit and then maybe pull that shoulder around a little bit and relax his arm a little bit more too. So I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to select all the body parts, hit a key on 3, and then add another pose.